All right, I'm gonna just
Erasers work well.
go through the recipe, and my apologies for doing the flippy doodle thing. I didn't realize it was like that till I got here. So you have options of about 4 different granolas on here, and I did that for your sake because I know not everybody wants to put a whole cup of maple syrup to make their granola. We just happen to have friends who tap our trees and give us maple syrup, so we do that. And I included this ultimate guide to easy healthy that gives you a lot of room to play, so you can make granola with whatever you have on hand using that recipe. And then Dave's favorite granola, I'm looking forward to trying that. Don brought that for us. So how many of you are breakfast eaters? Some are, some aren't. If you're not a breakfast eater, what's your reason for not eating breakfast?
I'm not awake yet.
Oh, yeah. I'm heading off to work early, so I have virtually
time.
no time.
No time.
We're technically breakfast.
Got better things to do with your morning minutes?
Yes,
I'm just gonna buy one of those like watermelon things, you know.
Well,
Watermelon.
our focus is on breakfast today. Breakfast food is also great for supper. Sometimes it can be the most simple thing to fix for supper if you're having one of those crunchy nights. It is listed, Belloc and Breslow did a 7 health factors for longevity. Number 1 was sleep 7 to 8 hours. Number 2 was no eating between meals. Number 3 was to eat breakfast regularly. 4 is maintain proper weight. 5, regular exercise. 6, a moderate to no use of alcohol. And 7, no smoking. So most of those health tips we've heard and we know, right? But number 3 on that list, eat breakfast regularly, in and of itself can increase longevity. So just kind of an interesting little fact. In 60 to 94-year-olds, an Alameda County study found that those who didn't eat breakfast regularly had a 50% increased risk of death compared to the regular breakfast eaters. So, studies have linked healthy breakfast with not only increased longevity, but also less chronic disease and better health. And the reasoning for that is you have platelet stickiness in the morning hours, and eating breakfast decreases that, thereby decreasing your risk of heart attack caused by clots. So I guess that's a prime time for those things to happen, is in the morning hours. So a group of scientists that spent 10 years studying the effects of eating breakfast concluded that a healthy breakfast can help both children and adults to be less irritable. Anybody irritable when they don't have food? Be more efficient, be more energetic, and have better test scores. And that was on tests taken before the noon recess. That's what that was based on. So breakfast provides a steady source of fuel to the brain, which greatly improves your mental function and your attention span.
Oh, yeah.
Doing that for
Frog eggs? That get covered by caviar or something like that?
yeah, kind of looks like it. Or
There we go.
sweetener to the batch you're trying than it called for in the recipe, just to make sure it tasted good for y'all. Otherwise, with the almond milk that doesn't have any sweetener already, it can be a little bland if you don't add some more. So, how many is it? Okay. So you want to add them. This calls for 2 tablespoons. you want to be stirring while you're pouring these in, because if they get in a clump, once they're wet, it's really hard to unclump. So do it a little bit at a time. One more. And these little things can go all over the counter real quick.
Yeah, I can't go any closer.
Okay, you can see how it's trying to cling to the sides a little bit, and that'll just stay right there and glued if you forgot. And then we'll do 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. You could add any flavorings you want. And we'll add some of this. It calls for 1/2 tablespoon, but I'm going to do a tablespoon. Get all that in there. This is maple syrup, by the way. Our neighbors that tap our trees bring us quart jars of it. It's nice. You can see it's already kind of starting to thicken. You got to get that maple syrup up off the bottom. You could use honey, you could use agave nectar, whatever sweetener you most easily have on hand. And then we'll just fill it up the rest of the way. Stick a lid on it, go a little bit more. And then go ahead and put it in the fridge. And then you'll want to come back after a half an hour or so and maybe just shake it up a little bit again or stir it. And then it should be good overnight. And that will become your chia pudding. So unlike any other typical patty recipe, this one has you make a seasoned broth that you boil on the stove first, and then you add your oats. So we have 3 cups of water. Yep, we do. There's my sheet. And you can of course vary the seasonings. You can make them spicy hot, you can make them taste more like just burgers for a sandwich.
What's that you put in?
This is called Bragg's Liquid Aminos. If you don't have this, you could replace it with soy sauce. That just gives it a nice salty flavor. And then we do 2 tablespoons of onion powder. It seems that when you cook a lot from scratch that you use a lot of onion and garlic powder. Anybody notice that? Or just straight up the onions and garlic. So we're doing 2 tablespoons of the granulated onion. And you could actually put this in the blender and put an actual onion and garlic in there and just whiz it up. That'd be another way you could do it. I forgot my cayenne, but normally we'd put that in there. That's what I use because I didn't have crushed red pepper. Or if you just don't, if you're like my mom who can detect a piece of spice from 10 yards, don't put it in there. Then we're going to add some maple syrup. Now I played with the recipe a little bit. The original called for a 1/4 cup and I decreased it a little, based on another recipe I had that I knew I liked too. So we'll do 1.5 tablespoons of maple syrup. Now burger recipes, you might not add any sweetener at all. And then sage. Anybody here not like sage? It's pretty good stuff. And I increased the amount of sage. The original has 1. That's why it's bolded, the numbers.
Okay.
The bold is the original and then the change I made, so. All right, there's that. And then nutmeg, just for fun. It always seems like that's supposed to be a sweet recipe item, not for savory, but adds just a nice little flavor. And then for the smoky flavor, you can use smoked paprika. You can use the bacon hickory seasoning, which is a powder, and it's probably a little harder to find. I didn't happen to have any, but this you can find. I think this is from Save-A-Lot. You can find this anywhere.
What is that?
This is smoked paprika. Or you could use the Wright's hickory liquid powder, just to make it smoky. Teaspoon of that, right? You making sure I'm getting the right amounts? Yes, teaspoon. And I think we have one more thing to add, some salt. So the one nice thing about cooking from scratch is if you're on a low salt diet, it's easy to adjust that without having to pay extra for a low sodium item. So then you just stir this up. Just make sure one more time. Oh, I did this before too, and so it's probably fine if you skip the oil. And here's about a tablespoon. Y'all measure like that, I know you do. So just take the spoon with it, and the next step is to take that over to the stove and get it boiling for a little bit, and then we will finish that recipe. Gluten-free power waffles. If you don't care if it's gluten-free, just use your white flour in place of that garbanzo flour, which is probably a little bit trickier to find, though usually Bob's Red Mill tends to have things like that. I think that's the same as the chia seeds or the Bob's Red Mill. So we start with water, and I'm just going to do a half batch. I feel like I got my ingredients mixed around there. It's always good to start with the water. You don't want to put the dry stuff on the bottom. And we're going to use 2 cups of oats, 1.5 cups of oats, excuse me, because I'm doing a half batch.
Rolled oats or cut oats?
I'm using quick, but you could use the other 2 because it's going to get ground up anyway. So rolled or this kind, either one will work. Then we do our garbanzo flour. This is actually garbanzo fava flour. Have you ever seen fava beans?
Never heard of that.
They're really big, about that big around. And interesting, I haven't had too much around, but you see them from time to time.
They're like a type of lima bean.
Yeah. I think I saw some roasted ones at Whitbeck's when I was looking for stuff. Then we're going to add some honey. You wouldn't have to, it just helps them to brown. So about a tablespoon, and honey is my favorite thing to measure without a measuring spoon because I hate all that sticky. And you leave half of it behind. Oil. About a tablespoon of that. You could replace this with a handful of nuts if you wanted to decrease your oil.
Can you use olive oil?
This is olive oil, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Use whatever oil you have. And then some vanilla right there in front of me. I'll do half tablespoon. And then a little bit of salt. Half teaspoon for this half batch. This is a 4th teaspoon measure. And then we just grind it up. Is it plugged in? Oh, there we go. It doesn't have to be super fine, that's good. You'll notice that it is kind of liquidy, if you can tell that. It will thicken as it sits, and one thing that's kind of important with these waffles is to make sure you have the right consistency. So we'll kind of let that sit for a minute. And then like after I've done the first batch and I come back to it, if it looks thick, I will just keep adding water and whisk it in until, you know, till it stops thickening up. Because thicker batter means a heavier waffle. In fact, to pour this in as it is right now would be a real lacy waffle and might be hard to get out.
Could you make those into pancakes instead of waffles if you don't have the waffle iron?
You could, I've never tried it, but you probably could do that. It doesn't have leavening though, and you might want to have it on an already heated up skillet or some kind of a iron thing that would be hot already so that it would give some lift to it. It's real handy to use a flip waffle iron because if you just put this on a regular one and leave it set, it's going to have nice shaping on the bottom, but the top might not all fill in. But if you flip it, then you get a pretty good all around shape. And this little one, for a long time, I was wishing for a little waffle iron that would make Eggo type waffles, you know. And I had found at one point a side-by-side that had two, but it always made Belgian waffles, and I don't always like the big thick waffles, and I'm so happy Dash came out with this. Let's see if I can do this turning your way. So, because it is just a Dash waffle iron, and it's not a flip waffle iron, I devised a way to make it a flip waffle iron, and hopefully I can do that without incident. So, I think I'm going to start with this one. Which way is the other way? So you want to fill it, I don't know if you can see. Fill it a little fuller than you would for a regular waffle with leavening in it. So we're going to want to fill that. I hope this isn't going to be misbehaving on me. Okay, which way is it flip? I'm doing this upside down and backwards. Okay, so that one's doing its thing. And this one, in order to make it a flip waffle, what I do is, I don't know.
I'm done with this, by the way.
Oh, okay, cool. I just open it and throw it on its back to start with. Fill it up. Sorry, I'm doing this. So again, you want it pretty full. Flip this down and then, well, I have my flip waffle iron. So I keep like 4 of these going. And this size is real nice for the freezer. They'll both freeze, but this one just heats up and is nicer left over than the bigger size to me. It's hard to get the toaster to thaw this all the way to the center. So these work out great. And I'll make up a batch and send it home with the kids. They love it. And usually you want to go about 5 minutes. Another way, if you've forgotten to set the timer, one thing you can go by is see all the steam rising off of it. When that starts to slow down and you don't see much steam rising anymore, it should be done and ready to come out. So, all right, let's move on to our next Odie thing. We seem to be very Odie today. Now we have, this water is boiled. And we're gonna add our oats, which we need.
What are you making again?
This is the unsausages. Help me out. Tell me how much oats I'm supposed to put in there. I think it's 3 cups.
2.5 to 3 cups.
2.5 to 3 cups. Okay. So we just stir that in. Do you have the lid still? 2. And you could use the regular oats for this too. It'll just be a little bit chewier and a different texture. You could mix the two. Oh, I have the lid over here.
So the quick oats.
Okay, I don't know if you can see. So it just thickens up. Some recipes have you cook it on the stove once the oats are in it. This one just had you do that and then cover it with a lid. And then we'll do stage 3 when that's had a chance to thicken up a little bit.
And cool enough to handle.
Yeah, cool enough to handle, but if you wait till it's all cool enough to handle, then it's clumpy and harder to shape. So I like to do it with a...
You have a bowl of water, get your hands in the water, and then
Yes,
shape
that helps.
without,
But I just mean it's already starting to make its own shape, so it's a little harder to... Either way works.
It's like baked cookies.
I didn't set a timer, so help me notice when.
Yeah, I was going to.
Okay. Could go maybe a titch longer.
Yeah.
Oh, granola is super easy to make. You just start with your dry ingredients in one bowl and you'll have your wet ingredients in there. So we want, since I'm doing a half batch, we're gonna do 4 cups of oats. And I like to mix a little bit of regular and quick, but for this one tonight, we're just doing all the same.
Which one are you doing?
We are on, oh, sorry, the sunrise granola.
Sunrise, thank you.
Yes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we'll have room to do that. And then you can add whatever nuts you prefer. Tonight, instead of adding walnuts and pecans, I'm just going to do all almonds. So that just be a total of 1 cup. The 1 cup measure went here. I'm going to dump the whole thing. And then you use a little bit of sunflower seeds if you have them. You want to get the raw ones. And I did find these at Whitbeck's, so they do have them. We're doing a 4th cup of that, so I'm going to eyeball that. Actually, it's a couple of tablespoons because I'm halving it. I mean, you really can't go too wrong. Then a little bit of coconut. Just do some. So now, I have this all ready. You can kind of stir it up. And then we'll work on the wet ingredients, which you notice there's no water in this one. What? Oh, check my waffle. Yes.
You got another.
Check the waffle. I don't have a
I
fork.
got a
here.
timer going.
You do have one going?
You can, it's a rough time, so
That one feels like it's still.
you probably got another minute or so.
You think so? Right, this way.
you need a fork, you said?
Yeah, I think this one's ready to go. These are gloves, but not hot pads. Yeah, I think that one's got to go a little bit longer. So there we have it. Because the batter was a little thin, it didn't quite fill. Actually, it acts like it's still kind of doughy. So I think I'll go a little bit longer. Go by your timer. Okay, you were right. Then we want a cup of maple syrup. No, half cup. Because we're doing a half batch, right?
Yes.
And you could use honey if you want, or like Dawn's, she devised a way to add dates for her sweetener. And one thing I learned from a different recipe is if you add just a little bit of Rice Krispies, it kind of lightens it up a little bit, so it's not so much hard chewing. So I like to do that. Alright. Then we need some vanilla, half teaspoon. And I usually don't put salt in my granola. I find it really doesn't need it, and it's kind of hard to get it dispersed evenly. And then 2 tablespoons of oil. So we'll go 1, 2. Then you want to mix this up, especially if your maple syrup is cold. It'll kind of congeal together nicely. And then you want to just make sure when you're stirring it that you get all of it covered with the wet ingredients so that you don't have any dry.
It's a good hands-on project.
Yes.
Oh, check your waffle. You get that
Check it
in.
again.
Smell it.
I'll just let it go till I get this stirred, I think. So it takes a little bit of dew, and you want to make sure you pull up from the bottom. And then where it sort of clumps, I just mash it like that, sort of, and that spreads it out a little. And you could use your hands too. I've done that. Now, some granola will say to do it in the oven at 225 or 350 or various temperatures. That gets them done quicker. But I find what works best, because I hate stirring granola, is if I just stick it in overnight at 170 and it comes out great. Also, if you have a food dehydrator, when I was making all that granola during Christmas time, I discovered that went to 165 degrees, so I did batches in there too, and that worked out. A little trickier spreading them on those trays, but they came out real nice from in there. So you can see there was still a little bit of dry oats there. You want to make sure you get all of that coated. I think it clumped for me better too in the food dehydrator. I don't know why that would be, but then you just dump it on your pan and try to spread it pretty evenly. Oh, I see a little bit of dry stuff there. And I like to use rubber spatulas or food squeegees, whatever you call them, so that you don't waste half of your recipe stuck to the bowl. All right, just spread it out. Stick it in the oven and it'll be ready for breakfast. Or you could take it for a snack. There we go. Okay. Now let's check that waffle.
Let me put that to the side.
This, yeah. Oh, and we still have our burgers to go. that waffle.
There you go.
That's good. So you can see on this side it came out nice and covered. A nice little Eggo waffle. So sometimes it doesn't fill all the way. That was partly because it was so runny when I first poured it in. See it? That this is nice. And it would probably still be too hot to handle. It's nice and thick. But if you use a scoop, you can just go along and stick them all in there. You can make them any size you want. I forgot to bring my cup to the flat bottom. I don't know if there's one here or not. I could squeeze this maybe. If you want to put a little bit right there. Or in a little bowl would be better. So because it's hot, I don't really want to do that. So I usually get, I have a tumbler glass that's really flat on the bottom, and I'll just set that in a bowl with a little water in it, and just go smash, smash. You see it starts to stick, so you just stick it back in the water. I don't know what that was going to do. So, I guess I'll try one more. Hey, my luck was all right there. And another way you could shape them is to use a ring and lid. Does anybody have these hanging around at their house? So you can make burger size. Oh yeah, there's plenty of water. And you might want to spray the lid a little bit. I think I'll use the smaller one, because these are sausages, not burgers, but batter could be either way. And then you'll want to just fill this up to the top, like that. Smooth it right off, dump it down, and if you need a fork or something to get it peeled off, then you'll have nice uniform patties either side you want them. So that is our oat burgers, and these just bake in the oven for 30 minutes or something. You flip them about halfway through, and there you go. So if you liked the texture but not the flavor so much, know that you can do whatever, make these taste like whatever you want them to taste like. Some recipes put herbs in. And then I'm not going to demonstrate the scrambled tofu, but I just wanted to show you. This is the kind of tofu you want. This one's extra firm. You want at least firm or extra firm, not silken. Silken is more for smoothies and things like that. And you can, tofu doesn't have much flavor of its own. You can make it become a lot of things. I've made mayonnaise with it. We recently had baked tofu where you sliced it and marinated it in something and then bake it. And you could make like a BLT with it or whatever in a sandwich. I make scrambled tofu fairly often. I make egg salad with it too. Just add some mayo and celery, onion, whatever you want, pickle. So, yeah, so it's in, I just take a knife and slice it right around here to let all the water, all the water out. And then I kind of turn it like this and keep it in the package but squeeze to get the water out. Another way you can do getting the extra liquid out is to wrap the block of tofu up in a towel, to stick a heavy something on it, and that'll soak up some of the tofu water. So there's that, and I think I've covered all the demos I was going to do. Do we have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
What do you put in the tofu to make it taste like scrambled eggs?
You can get an item called, are you talking about the black salt? No.
No, I don't know what the taste is.
Oh,
What the flavor is you put in. Do you put turmeric in it?
turmeric, cumin,
color.
salt. So you can add a little yeast flakes in it that'll kind of make it buttery
Okay.
tasting. Sometimes I throw in a tablespoon of that or so in there. Other recipes use a lot of the yeast flakes, just depends on your flavor preferences. And you can make that stuff just plain old scrambled tofu, or you can add in peppers, onions, mushrooms, the whole bit.
Doing
So-
it that way helps hide the tofu flavor if you can't get it just right.
Yes, yes. So I'm not sure how that was tonight. I had a little taste at home, and I think I picked a salty pocket of it. So I don't know if it had enough salt for you guys or not. But I didn't want to oversalt it, that was for sure.
Right.
This is a good waffle.
Yeah.
You like it fresh off? So you usually make the waffles and stick them on like a, what do you call it, that you put your
Cooling rack.
cookies on?
Cooling
Cooling rack. And, or you could put them in the oven to keep them warm while people are eating that one so they can get the next one warm. It seems like he always puts a new one on his plate just before I pull off a fresh one. But